Well, here we are again. What's going on, hikers? In today's video, I have some mistakes that I have personally made and some mistakes that I saw others make that I tried to learn from, and that's exactly what I would suggest you doing. Take the mistakes that me and the other people I'm about to tell you about and apply them to you so that you do not make these mistakes. If you're new to the channel, my name is Jeremiah Stringer, and here we talk about all things hiking and backpacking. So if you're into that kind of thing, consider subscribing to the channel. That's exactly what we're all about. Starting with, first off, one mistake that I make quite often, and I don't know when you're watching this, but for me, the weather is a-changing. When it's cold outside especially, I do not drink enough water. And the way I combat that is just be like, every 4 miles or so, I'm gonna drink a liter of water, or whatever it may be for you, for your environment, and for your body type and your experience level and athleticism and all that. But especially on those cold days. All right, second thing, staying on the topic of water, I ran into somebody that was doing an FKT of a trail that I was on. And I offered this person a cherry tomato. They're like, no, I'm doing an unsupported FKT. I was like, okay, that is super cool. And I noticed that they were drinking like really dirty water. And I was like, so you're doing this FKT, are you not filtering your water at all? And they're like, no, I don't want to take the time to filter it. And I was like, okay, aren't you worried that you're gonna get Giardia? And they're like, well, I've already had it twice. And it wasn't twice on this FKT attempt, but I would heavily caution you to at least, if you're not gonna filter, use those tablets. Those, in my opinion, work just as well, the Aquamura tablets. And if you're filtering, I don't know, right now I'm going with the Sawyer Squeeze Full. So I would highly suggest making sure you're drinking clean water, always filtering it, always at least using those tablets. Number 3, something I still do it all the time, and I don't know, I'm at a loss for words on how to change it really, I guess. Maybe you can give me some advice in the comments below. But one thing I do quite often is overpack. And when I mean overpack, typically it is either clothing. Maybe I'm packing too much clothes because it's gonna be warm and I'm not gonna need all this winter gear or stuff to keep me warm. But more often than not, I just like to eat. So I bring a lot of extra food, especially chocolate. That chocolate's pretty heavy. When I was on the long trail, I was buying those big brick chocolate bars. I buy like 4 at every resupply. So one thing you could try to do is not overpack, I guess I should say, on your clothing and especially the food. You'd be surprised. A lot of times you get out there and you're backpacking and you're not as hungry as you think. So a typical day for me, I bring a breakfast, lunch, dinner, and then a snack between breakfast and lunch, a snack between dinner and lunch, and then possibly maybe a little chocolate before I go to bed. All right, let's go on to the next one. So number 4 is still dealing with water, but in a different way. One time I was backpacking and doing a little, I guess you'd call it mini through hike of the JMT in Tennessee. And what happened was it rained. It rained a lot. And my father-in-law and I were on this 40 to 50 mile journey, and we come to this creek, which at this point had pretty much turned into like a little river. And we crossed it. I'm not sure it was a good idea. We probably should have found another way. We made our way up and down the bank to see if we could find a different way. Couldn't, and we just hauled across. But it only takes, I think, a couple inches of water to just sweep you off your feet. And we're talking, knee-deep water here. So be especially careful if you're doing some water crossings that are more than, I would say, ankle deep. Try to stay away from the rapids. And I would also try and at least have somebody there with me if you have no other choice but to cross the creek. What do I know? I'm just one guy that's done a little bit of backpacking. On to the next one. So number 5 on our list today. Hold on, don't dislike the video yet. We're gonna get a little controversial with the whole ultralight type deal. I want you to backpack however you want to backpack, but I would say don't care too much about your base weight, especially when you're starting out. You probably have a bunch of budget gear. That's exactly what I started with, and it's heavy. And as you go, you're going to pick up more and more newer, lighter pieces of gear. But it gets to a point where your quality of time in the woods, at least for me, I can't speak for you, is it goes down because either my gear is not what I want or I'm leaving stuff at home that would have made my life a little bit easier. So as you're going through your gear, I would probably make a list of what I took. And then when you get back home, check and see on that list, what did I use, what did I not use? And then what you didn't use, of course, leave it at home next time. But there is an equilibrium somewhere in the middle here where your quality of time on the trail and at camp and all that, and the energy you have to put forth to carry all that gear meet, and you get that perfect spot. That's what you should look for. At least that's what I look for. So caring too much about your base weight, that's one of them. Speaking of gear, number 6, how to take care of this gear. One of the biggest mistakes that you can make is you can store your gear improperly. And the most common way to do this is you get back home, your sleeping bag, it may not even feel like it to you, but it may be a little bit damp, or it could be your water filter. Maybe it didn't air out quite long enough and you put it in storage. Myself, if you want to see how I store my gear, I'll link the video above and you can watch that. But I have a container specifically for like all my filters and hoses and bladders and all that stuff on my gear shelf. So in that container, if I stick the Sawyer squeeze back in there and it's still got some water, that's not good, right? It's gonna get all moldy in there. Your sleeping bag will do the same thing. So if you don't store it properly, technically it should just be like a mesh bag, like a laundry bag would work fine, or you could just hang it up on something, but you store it and you kind of let it air out, even if it doesn't feel very damp to you. The worst thing you can do is stick it back in a compression sack and cinch that sucker up and wait for your next trip, because you might get it back out and it's all moldy. One other thing you can do, and a subscriber, I don't remember who it was, but I remember reading their comment and they told me what they did when they stored their gear was they drilled some holes in the lid or in the container that they stored their like water bladders and that kind of stuff in, and that just gave them one more little buffer between moldiness and not moldiness. But take it however you will. Number 7, we are still on the gear here. I'm gonna help you save some money. So I have bought in one specific subsection of gear, like for instance rain jackets. I bought budget of the same thing, trying to save money whenever I could have buy once, cry once instead, and just had a good quality piece of gear. Now I'm all about budget, and I've made plenty of budget videos in the past on quality gear. One thing I've suggested is Frog Togs. So Frog Togs are great, and I'm using this as an example of what's cost me. They're great until I absolutely shred them by walking off trail on these unmarked trails all through the woods, walking through the pines. They're grabbing at me, they're ripping my jacket. Well, what would have been better is if instead of buying like a $20 Frog Tog set, I had just bought like a better version of the Frog Togs. Like for instance, now I use the $30, just the jacket. A $30 version of the jacket that's a lot tougher, a lot higher quality than the $20 pants and jacket combo. So sometimes it's better to leave the budget and don't buy the cheapest gear you can find. Buy once, cry once, and then you'll have it. Even if it costs you a little more, it may save you in the long run, but you'll have to make your own informed decision on that specific piece of gear. Folks, if you've enjoyed the video, make sure you give me one of these, subscribe to the channel, and comment below. We'll see you in the next one.